Leaders across Metro Atlanta and across the nation are gearing up for No Kings protests set to take place tomorrow. The first protest, you might remember, happened back in June, and organizers say around 5 million Americans joined demonstrations against President Donald Trump and his policies. And one at Georgia State's Capitol drew thousands of protesters. The city of Atlanta says a permit has been issued for the event and that it has been working closely with organizers to ensure that it is safe and successful. DeKalb County Police also say they've been in contact with leaders about the protest to make sure things go smoothly tomorrow. So the last No Kings protest in DeKalb County was the only one in Metro Atlanta that ended with arrests. Officers say they arrested at least 8 people when they tried to move from the sidewalk into the road. But DeKalb County jail records showed close to 24 people may have actually been detained that day. Journalist Mario Guevara was also arrested while reporting on the protest. He was turned over to ICE and deported to El Salvador just earlier this month. With more on what we can expect on the law enforcement side, let's bring into the show someone we've seen before, Dr. Thaddeus Johnson. Always good to have you here, a Georgia State Assistant Professor of Criminal Justice and Criminology, who's also spent more than 2 decades in law enforcement. So it's great to have you on for your perspective as always. You were actually a part of our coverage last time these rallies took place. And so we're going to do it again tomorrow. How hopeful are you that there will be relative peace with these protests this time?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you all for having me, and thank you for covering this important story. I'm very optimistic, always cautiously optimistic. Americans were upset. Everything that seemed to be politicized, but at the end of the day, these protests have generally been peaceful. I'm very heartened to hear that the police have been working with organizers, and that's really the ground one, right? We have to facilitate this protected risk. Facilitate this protected speech, manage the risk, and isolate the crimes. It is not necessarily the viewpoint. So I'm very heartened to hear what's going on. And given the past, what happened in Atlanta, you're going to have some incidents. But think about these are happening across the nation, and it was relatively peaceful, not only in Atlanta, but across the nation. So I'm very optimistic. There are some concerning rhetoric calling these protests un-American that I think could be antagonistic, but I think that's going to be water under the bridge. So I'm very optimistic that things will go well tomorrow.
All right, and you have served in law enforcement, as we mentioned earlier. What do you think the biggest challenge is for police and different departments as they head into these rallies and demonstrations? Yes, they're working with some of the organizers, but you then have those agitators, if you will, that can come in and really disrupt things.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of things that officers can do, and one thing is not put militarized equipment on and do what we saw back in 2020. That's not going to work. What you need to have plainclothes units, regular uniform units, and if you're talking about having for those lawbreakers or those troublemakers, you're going to have mobile arrest team. You're probably going to have drones. You have camera. You're going to have people in the field. So you're going to have massive amounts of intel. Now, mind you, policing is not an exact science. It's probable cause. It's putting evidence together. And so I did hear that you mentioned that several people were detained. Well, it's possible that people can be detained and then let go once you further investigate. That's how policing works. And so the one thing that we can't come in and be suppressive. We want to be precise. We want to root out those troublemakers so we not only protect our police, but particularly protect our protesters and our other citizens that may be along the route.
Yeah, you want everybody to be safe. And that is, we saw the biggest concerns, I think, were in DeKalb County here in Metro Atlanta last time. That's where we saw the arrests and detainments. That's where also the tear gas was released. What lessons do you think police and even city leaders may have taken from what they saw happen there in DeKalb last time?
Yeah, absolutely. Organize, organize, organize. Prepare, prepare, prepare. Make sure that these messages and signals are sent out there, right? These organizers do a good job of helping with crowd control, right, and managing these things. And the one thing we want to do is not devolve into crowd control, keep it as crowd management. So I think the one thing that officers will learn is perhaps not to escalate too quickly. It is stressful for the officers as well. But I think also perhaps the citizens have learned a lesson as well, is that if we listen to directives, that officers are not trying to be suppressive, that actually that is trying to keep the route safe, keep us safe, keep people on the sidewalks and keep the streets free. I think we're learning and growing as Americans on both sides. But the really big thing is working together, learning from these things and not overreacting, even perhaps training your officers for these events. I remember as an officer, I don't remember getting training in crowd management or crowd control. That's specialized training. That should be something for every officer, and that starts at the top down. So those are a few lessons that have been learned. And also, I think some things that's going forward is like we need to train, and this is going to be part of our democracy moving forward, always has been. So we have to be prepared to do this in a democratic and a peaceful manner, in a precise manner, and not just in a way that appears to suppress people's freedom of speech.
Yeah, and I think that's the goal from everyone, even on both sides. Thaddeus Johnson, we always appreciate your perspective. Thanks.
Thank you for having me.